If you're like most Canadians, your main connection with aviation is as a passenger. Now, you may not think you have very much to do with aviation safety, but there's actually a lot you can do to make your flight safer and, incidentally, make it easier for the flight attendants to do their jobs.
Before each and every flight, the ground crews prepare the aircraft. The pilots and dispatchers meticulously plan their flights. They leave nothing to chance. As a passenger, you can also do some planning to help make your trip go more smoothly, more comfortably, and more safely. And it all starts before you leave home. For example, when packing for your flight, there are some things such as butane cigarette lighters or an open box of matches that cannot go in your luggage. Others include things such as fireworks, butane refills, scented fuels for lamps, flares, cans of paint, aerosol cans, personal protection devices, and any type of ammunition or firearms. If you're unsure what is allowed, check with the airline. You should also make sure that you pack your own bags and that you don't let them out of your sight until they have been checked in at the ticket counter. And never accept anyone else's baggage to check or carry on the flight. Speaking of carry-on luggage, many passengers don't seem to be aware that the overhead bins in the cabin do have weight limitations and should not be used to store heavy items. Even the jumbo jets can be tossed around in rough air, and if the overhead bin door flies open and that heavy baggage falls out, it can seriously injure anyone sitting below it. Also consider what sort of things you do put under the seat in front of you. Keep in mind that they can slide backwards on takeoff or get in your way during an emergency evacuation. You don't want to be tripping over parcels, yours or someone else's, if you're trying to get out of the airplane in a hurry. For safety in a more comfortable cabin, check the big bulky luggage and take only what you need for the flight on board with you. Whether the aircraft that you're traveling in is large or small, each flight begins with a safety briefing that includes things like a seatbelt reminder and an oxygen mask demonstration. Listen to it and take a moment to read the passenger briefing card. It's important to note the location of the nearest emergency exit and count the number of seat rows between you and that exit. Don't assume that the way you entered the airplane is the way you will go out. If your flight will take you over water, the flight attendant will brief you on how to locate, put on, and inflate your life jacket. Listen carefully to the briefing and again review the passenger briefing card. You probably will never have to use what you learn in these briefings, but if the unthinkable happens, such preparations can literally make the difference between life and death. At many smaller airports, the passengers walk across a busy ramp to get to the airplane. Airlines have developed effective procedures to keep passengers away from whirling propellers or moving aircraft, but you can do your part by staying close to the airline employee who is guiding you. They have been trained to keep you out of trouble in an area that is probably unfamiliar to you. Although they don't have propellers, jet aircraft, even small business jets, can present their own special hazards. There's a danger area both in front of the engines from the air intake and behind from the jet exhaust. If you're too close behind when the pilot adds some power, the thrust that's created can easily throw you off your feet. And whether jet or prop powered, on the ground, airplanes, even little airplanes, are not as maneuverable as cars, and they do not always provide pilots with the visibility needed to see pedestrians, so always give them the right of way and stay well out of their path. Helicopters can present their own special hazards, and although most people are aware of the danger associated with the main rotor, many are oblivious to the hazard presented by the tail rotor. Always approach or depart a helicopter from the front in plain view of the pilot and follow the aircrew's instructions. Float planes are a common means of travel in many parts of Canada. The north was virtually opened by the float planes, and they are still a primary source of transportation in these areas. Because they don't operate using established passenger ramps and walkways, it's important to listen to the pilot's briefing on the safe procedure before entering and exiting the aircraft. Wherever you travel as a passenger, whether it's at small or large airports, your chances of getting into trouble are minimal if you follow the correct procedures. There are a lot of built-in safeguards, and other people will be helping to look after you, but keep a heads-up attitude and take some responsibility for your own safety. And never be afraid to speak out if you see something that you feel might be unsafe.
Flying should be an enjoyable experience. With a little bit of pre-flight planning and consideration, you can make your flight more enjoyable and safer. I'm Mike Dueron, inviting you to return next week to fly with us through the Overcast.